and welcome to part 2 of Fort Donelson. So today we got an interesting adventure planned. We're going to go check out the actual battlefield tour, which is actually a bunch of little things that we can stop at and actually get pictures and learn some information. And guess who I got with me again? That's right, I got Melissa again. I know you all like her, so she's going to be back with us again today. And then we're also going to head to the historic village, just so you guys know. So stick along for the ride, and we'll get some good footage for you, and we'll get you set up. See you in a little bit. Two, one. Hey everyone, remember at the beginning of the show I told you about my special guest, my sister. You guys remember her from our first trip to Donelson and when she joined us at Land Between the Lakes part 2. Guess what? She's here with us again today. So what do you have in front of us here, Lise?
This is the monument statue in honor of all the soldiers that have died in this war. Now what David is going to do, my brother, he's going to follow me around. I'm going to read each plaque so you know what it says, okay? In case you can't get up here. Okay? You ready, David?
Yes.
Okay. So, this shaft is dedicated as an altar of remembrance to the Confederate soldiers who fought at Fort Donelson, February of 1862, by the Daughters of the Confederacy of Tennessee. And at the bottom it has a little saying. It says, "There is no honor spot of ground than where dedicated valor lies." And I misread that. That's holier. Sorry about that. Okay, and then the next one. Here was the place of battle. You who have never known the scour and pierce of battle may only remember moments by names, places by monuments. But I, who was born by the battlefields, cannot escape a sorrow that dwells, a valor that lingers, a hope that spoke on lips now still. That's deep.
Yeah, that's some stuff right there.
Okay. And then here's some dates. Okay, we got February 13th, 1862, February 14th, 1862, and February 15th, 1862. Somewhere here, our unknown dead will die forever, with arms unstacked, forever, with colors that cannot be furled. Another deep thing. Here's the last side. Honor their valor. Emulate the devotion with which they gave themselves to the service of their country. Let it never be said that their sons in these southern states have forgotten their noble example. That is deep. And I hope you enjoyed this. This is our first step on the tour, and we'll be going to the next one soon, and we'll see you in a little bit.
See you in a bit, guys.
Have a good day. See you later.
Life at Fort Donelson. We lived luxuriously in comfortable tents and log huts. One Fort Donelson soldier wrote, in the more tranquil days before cold weather set in and the armies clashed, besides rations of flour, fresh and cured meats, sugar and coffee, every boat brought boxes from home, filled with things a farm or store could provide, including uniforms and clothing. The reconstructed log in front of us represents the approximately 400 huts built for the fort garrison by soldiers and the slave laborers as living quarters.
Some 100 of them inside the 15-acre fort. When winter came, these crude huts with their canvas roofs made from tents and their fireplaces made from stone, stick, and mud warded off the wind, rain, and snow, and kept many Confederates from freezing to death. Most of the thousands of soldiers who arrived shortly before the battle were housed in tents or slept beneath a blanket on the ground and suffered terribly in the bitter February cold.
Fort Donelson. The Confederate defenses consisted of this fort, 2 water batteries, and the line of rifle pits enclosing these and the town of Dover, Tennessee. The garrison of the fort proper consisted of the
30th Tennessee, Colonel John W. Head, the 49th Tennessee, Colonel James E. Bailey, 50th Tennessee, Colonel Cyrus A. Suggs. This force was organized by General Pillow upon his arrival on February 9, 1862, as a brigade under Colonel Head. On February 12th, Colonel Head's regiment was ordered to a position in the outer defenses, and the immediate command of the fort passed to Colonel Bailey.
The artillery armament of this fort consisted of 1 8-inch howitzer and 2 9-pound ER guns under Lieutenant P.K. Stankiewicz.
The main line of resistance consisted of the line of trenches, which extend from Hickman Creek over a distance of approximately 2 miles along the crest of the hills and envelop the town of Dover. At some point in front of the entrenchments, felled trees formed an abatis, and presented a difficult obstacle in the path of the attacker. To stop the Confederate breakout attempt on February 15th, Grant sent his reorganized troops against the Confederate left.
At the same time, to take advantage of the weakened enemy line, he sent C.F. Smith's division against the Confederate right.
Smith's forces rolled over the Confederate outer defenses and pushed the Southerners back to a position along the ridge in front of you.
There, the charge was halted by Buckner's forces, who had arrived just as the Union assault had begun.
Afterwards, Buckner paid tribute to the field artillery for its role in checking the Yankee advance.
The strong new defensive position on the ridge and the coming of night ended the fighting.
The Union forces grudgingly withdrew to the old Confederate defense line. In this desperate fighting, several hundred men lost their lives. Many of them still lie in this area in unmarked graves. Can you believe that?
weather was bitterly cold, and as the soldiers of the General Smith's division lay tentless and fireless along this ridgeline the night of February 15th, 1862, an icy wind made sleep impossible. The occupied trenches that only that morning formed the right flank of the Confederate defenses, now having driven the Confederate off this ridge, across the ravine, and onto the next ridge, they anxiously awaited daylight to resume the battle, but there would be no fighting. In the morning, just after daybreak, the sound of a bugle from within Fort Donelson announced a Confederate officer with a letter from General Buckner to General Grant requesting the appointment of commissioners to agree upon terms of capitulation of the forces and fort under my command. When the final surrender was announced, Lawman's brigade was given the honor of being the first Union troops to march into the captured fort, reward for their performance in the February 15th attack. Lawman's brigade consisted of the following regiments: the 2nd Iowa Infantry, the 7th Iowa Infantry, the 14th Iowa Infantry, and the 25th and the Berg's Sharpshooters. Unfortunately, the Confederate weren't the only folks to suffer. The soldiers of both armies suffered from the bitter winter weather. The Union soldiers, however, were less able to cope with conditions because some had thrown away their winter gear on a 12-mile march from Fort Henry when the weather turned unseasonably warm. Once at Donelson, however, they were plagued with rain, snow, and sleet, and bone-chilling cold. Both Union and Confederate soldiers suffered frostbite and even death. Holding the outer lines, the remains of the trenches you see here are part of the outer line of defenses that protected Fort Donelson against land attack. This part of the line was initially occupied by Captain Rice E. Graves' 6-gun Kentucky battery with instructions to keep Union troops out of the Indian Creek Valley.
On February 13, 1862, when Union General McClellan tried to capture Captain Frank Manny's 4-gun Tennessee battery on the ridge southeast of here, Graves' battery was instrumental in thwarting the Federal attack. During this battle, the first major fighting between the two armies, exploding shells ignited dry leaves and brush below Manny's position, and the ensuing fire killed a number of Union wounded. A few Confederates rescued some of the Union soldiers from the flames.
The outer line entrenchments, hurriedly built after the surrender of Fort Henry,
ran in a broken semicircle from Hickman Creek on the west to near the Cumberland River beyond town.
$13,000 prisoners, 13,000 dejected Confederate defenders of Fort Donelson huddled here against the cold on February 16, 1862. They had fought long and hard against Grant's forces and did not consider themselves defeated.
They had been surrendered against their will and now waited to be transported north. Never before in the Civil War had so many prisoners been taken, and the poorly clad Confederates could only guess what awaited them.
After being issued 2 days' rations and allowed to keep their clothing, blankets, and such personal property as may be carried about a person, the prisoners were shipped 120 miles to Cairo, Illinois.
From there, trains carried them to prison camps in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Massachusetts. In September 1862, most of the prisoners were exchanged for Union soldiers being held in Confederate prison camps.
Where did they go? Most of the enlisted men were taken to prison camps in Illinois and Indiana. Most of the officers went to camps in Ohio and Massachusetts.
Camps Douglas and Butler, Chicago and Springfield, Illinois. Camp Morton was in Indianapolis, Indiana. Camp Chase and Johnson's Island was in Columbus and Sandusky, Ohio. Fort Warren was in Boston, Massachusetts.
It was a battle that lasted 5 days. It was a battle for Fort Donelson that started on February 12, 1862, and ended on February 16, 1862. It was a battle to control the waterways, to control the shipment of goods and the receivement of goods. It was a battle for ideology. One side believed in slavery, and one side didn't believe in slavery, which believed that everyone and every man, woman, and child should be free. It was a battle that was brutal. It was a battle that ended up having 13,000 Confederate prisoners that were shipped to multiple places in the United States to prison camps. It was a battle where the Confederate soldiers refused to surrender, even though their commanding officers put in the order to surrender. It talks about the Battle of Buckner's Defense, one of the Confederate generals who actually did a really good job, him and his brigade. Unfortunately, they still lost. But even in losing, he actually commended his artillery for the job that they did. Unfortunately, he lost 200 of his soldiers, which are buried at Fort Donelson today in unmarked graves as we speak. It talks about the Dover Hotel and how instrumental it and the Rice House were in the agreement to surrender. It was definitely interesting. I hope you enjoyed this video and learned a little bit about our history, the good and the bad. We always know that a war, especially back in the day in the Civil War, battles were furious. They were fast. They were brutal. People died. Just like today, war is not good. Unfortunately, war exists and it always will. That's neither here or there. I do want to thank you for enjoying me and my sister Melissa on this trip for part 2 of Fort Donelson. I appreciate you spending the time with me. If you like the kind of content I do, I would really appreciate you do a little like, maybe a subscribe, share it with other people who might be interested. Comment if you have anything if you have some ideas that I could have added or some facts I might have missed, because there was a lot to cover here. So we did our best, but there's only so much you can do. Unfortunately, out of the 10 parts of the tour, we missed 8 and 9. We couldn't find it. We did find a map afterwards. So hopefully we maybe can do a follow-up one day and check out what was at point 8 and 9 of the battlefield tour. Definitely, if you're in Dover, Tennessee at some time and you're in that area, it's definitely worth going to visit the Donelson battlefield and the historic site there. It's really makes you think about what's going on, and it's interesting to find out the history and how things changed over the years. You can support us by going to our store, NuImageStore.com. That's NuImage store.com, where we sell comfortable outdoor lifestyle clothing at affordable prices, which are made as you order them. So it's good for the environment. And the proceeds from that help me to try and get the equipment and the time so that I could go out and do more video for you. Thank you all for watching. Thank you to my subscribers who come back every so often and they get a chance to watch these videos that I make. So, stay safe, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next campground of America. Have a great day, all. Goodbye.